the second largest economy on the planet. A nation that built more skyscrapers in the last decade than the rest of the world combined. A country that told the world loudly, confidently, and with maximum government-approved enthusiasm that it was unstoppable. And yet, right now, in the streets of its most celebrated cities, you can hear something that nobody expected: silence. Not the peaceful kind. We're talking about the kind of silence that happens when an entire economic ecosystem quietly packs its bags and leaves without saying goodbye. The kind of silence that echoes inside shopping malls that once sold commercial space for $1,000,000 per square meter, where now, not even a single rat bothers to stick around. That's not a metaphor, that's a direct quote from someone standing inside one of those empty malls. And that image of a multi-billion-dollar commercial hub so dead that the wildlife has moved out is exactly the kind of thing that makes you stop, tilt your head, and ask, what on earth happened to China's economy? That's what we're unpacking today. We're going coast to coast across China's biggest cities. We're looking at the real numbers, the real streets, the real people, not the government press release version, not the GDP looking good headline version. The actual version, the one being filmed by ordinary people on their phones and uploaded before the censors can catch up. Let's start in Shenzhen, because if you want to understand what's gone wrong, you start where the dream was supposed to be most alive. Shenzhen is not some forgotten backwater. This is a first-tier city, China's Silicon Valley. The place where tech dreams were born, where factories hum 24 hours a day, where a kid from rural Hunan could show up with nothing and, if he hustled hard enough, build something. Shenzhen was the proof point, the evidence that the Chinese economic miracle wasn't just propaganda. And for a long time, it was delivered. But something happened. Something that the government's carefully curated social media presence couldn't contain, because ordinary people started filming. And what they filmed, especially around the time of the Chinese New Year, when cities are supposed to be at their most electric, was devastating. Empty streets, scattered trash, no festive lights, no crowds, no that wall-to-wall human chaos that used to define the pre-New Year energy. One vlogger uploaded footage to X, formerly Twitter, and the clip spread fast. Not because it was sensational or dramatic, because it was quiet, and that quiet said everything. Now here's the interesting part. When that video dropped, what happened next told you more about China's political reality than anything you'd find in an economics textbook. Almost immediately, the comments section was flooded, not with discussion, not with debate, but with coordinated attacks, insults, dismissals. The so-called 50-cent army, government-affiliated online commenters who earn their keep defending the party line, showed up in full force to discredit the vlogger. And you know what the other netizens said in response. The fact that they're responding this hard just proves the video is real. That's the tell. When the government's defense mechanism activates at this speed and this intensity, you're not watching misinformation get corrected. You're watching a mirror get smashed because nobody likes what it's showing. Let's go deeper into Shenzhen. Specifically, Dongmen Old Street, which, if you don't know it, is basically the Times Square of Shenzhen retail, or at least, it was. This is Lahu Dongmen, the commercial hub that's been the heartbeat of Shenzhen shopping for decades. Department stores, wholesale markets, food stalls. The kind of place where you'd elbow through crowds just to browse. Where small retail spaces once sold for $1,000,000 per square meter. Not rented, sold, and people paid it, happily, because the foot traffic was so reliable you could basically print money just by showing up. A vlogger recently walked through and posted what he found, his words. Take one last look here. This is Lahu Dongmen, where the shops once sold for as much as $1,000,000 per square meter. And now look at it, they're all shut down. Some of these shops were even bought with loans. And now that business is gone, the loans still have to be paid. If not, the bank will sue you. They won't care about any of this. Someone bought a tiny commercial space for the price of a Manhattan penthouse, took out loans to do it, and now they're sitting on a shutdown storefront, still paying interest, while the bank waits patiently to ruin them. A year ago, this street was shoulder to shoulder with people. Today, it's a monument to misplaced optimism and the cruel irony. The debt didn't disappear with the customers. The loans are still very much alive. Still in Shenzhen, let's head to the Nanshan district, because apparently one devastated commercial district wasn't enough to paint the full picture. Coastal city in Nanshan is, or was, one of the largest business and commercial complexes in western Shenzhen. This place had nearly 350 brands, high-end retail, specialty dining, cinemas, entertainment, the kind of complex that urban planners point to when they want to show off what modern China can build. From above, from a drone, from a promotional brochure, it still looks incredible. But walk into it.
倒闭，倒闭， 倒闭。
Bankrupt, bankrupt, bankrupt. The shops in front have all gone bankrupt too. This is coastal city in Shenzhen. I really didn't expect Nanshan's coastal city to have fallen to this point. The entire street here is up for rent. It's gotten to this level. This was once the prime location, with people rushing in overnight to grab these lucrative shops. Back then, prices per square meter could reach 400 to 500,000 yuan. And you had to bribe someone and rely on connections to even get one. Now look, they're all empty. Not even a rat stays here. Not even a rat. That's your economic indicator right there. When the vermin leave, it's over. And the stories behind each shuttered storefront are the same. Someone took out a loan, bought or rented a space at peak prices, bet on the foot traffic continuing forever, and then the foot traffic stopped. Now they're not just losing income, they're losing money every single month while they pay down principal, interest, and management fees on a space that generates zero revenue. The math doesn't work. It has never been designed to work at this point. And the people stuck in these situations have almost no options. Here's a crucial piece of the puzzle that explains a lot of what's happening across Shenzhen and, by extension, across China's manufacturing cities. Near the Foxconn Longhua campus, there was a massive commercial complex that used to be the beating heart of the surrounding community. During rush hour, the place was packed so tightly you could barely move. Workers from the factory, their families, vendors, street food sellers, a whole ecosystem built around the economic gravity of that single massive employer. Then Foxconn shifted its manufacturing operations. And here's the brutal, non-negotiable truth about economic geography. When the anchor leaves, everything built around it collapses. After Foxconn left, the people disappeared and the place just fell into decline, never to recover. These commercial buildings should definitely be avoided now because they depend entirely on foot traffic. Once the people are gone, it's all over. Now these shops can't even be rented out or sold. The worst part is for those who bought with loans. They're not only paying off principal and interest, but also the management fees. I don't know how they're going to make it through. And this isn't just a Shenzhen problem. This is a structural problem playing out across dozens of Chinese cities that built entire commercial ecosystems on the assumption that the factories and the factory workers would be there forever. They weren't. The factories moved, the workers followed the work. And the landlords are left holding leases on spaces that have become, effectively, very expensive parking lots. A netizen put it simply. He said, "The biggest change I feel in Shenzhen is that the population dividend is gone." In the past, in places like Guangchong Bay and Dongmen Street, when you walked, you had to push through the crowds to move faster. Now there are only a few people scattered around and you can count them all. The population dividend, that's a term worth sitting with for a second. Shenzhen's entire economic identity was built on an endless supply of young, ambitious, mobile workers, people willing to leave their hometowns, grind hard, live small, and bet on the city paying them back. And for years, it did. The deal was simple. You come, you work, the city grows, everyone wins. But the deal has changed, and the same netizen put it with devastating clarity. No wonder people in Shenzhen say that in the morning, the train station brings in a group of energetic young people, and by evening the train station sends off a batch of exhausted, drained older youth. The landlords left behind sit in their slippers, sipping tea, commenting how lazy the young people are, how they're not ambitious enough. If the company gives employees a 1,000 yuan housing subsidy, the landlords around here will raise the rent by 800 yuan that very night. Welcome to Shenzhen, where money is made, money is spent, and everyone just wants to make a little money. Read that again. A company gives workers a housing subsidy, a goodwill gesture to help people afford rent, and the landlords immediately absorb most of it by raising rent. That's the system in a nutshell. Every economic gain by workers is systematically extracted upward before it can actually improve anyone's life. So the young people are leaving. They're doing the math and deciding the grind isn't worth it. And when the young people leave a city built entirely on young people's energy, you get empty malls, you get quiet streets. You get a city that looks prosperous from the air and feels like a slow-motion funeral from the ground. If Shenzhen's collapse is alarming, Beijing's is unsettling. This is China's capital, the seat of political power. The city that, arguably more than any other, represents what the Chinese government wants the world to see when it looks at China, and even Beijing is going quiet. Wangfujing Pedestrian Street. If you know Beijing, you know this name. It's not just a commercial district, it's an icon. Large shopping centers, traditional Chinese brands, tourist attractions, street food. For decades, Wangfujing was China's version of Oxford Street or Fifth Avenue. A place where you expected crowds, where you'd have been genuinely shocked to find elbow room. A netizen recently filmed what Wangfujing looks like now. It now feels as desolate as a small plaza in a third-tier city. Third-tier city, not a great comparison for the capital's crown jewel commercial street, but apparently accurate. Other Beijingers chimed in with their own memories and their own disbelief.
I visited Wangfujing at the end of 2010 and it was crowded in the evenings. I never imagined it would end up like this.
I worked in Beijing from 2008 to 2012 and often visited this area. I've never seen it like this before. Where have all the people gone?
I used to visit Wangfujing, Xidan, and Zhongguancun on weekends. It was quite lively. Now it feels like walking through a ghost town.
And here's the number that contextualizes all of this. Over the past 5 years, the number of young people aged 25 to 40 in Beijing has decreased by approximately 1.85 million. 1.85 million people, that's the population of a medium-sized city, gone from Beijing in 5 years. And that's not counting the broader demographic shift. By the end of 2024, Beijing's population is expected to sit around 21.83 million, with birth and death rates nearly balanced. Meanwhile, the proportion of citizens over 60 is climbing. In other words, Beijing is aging. Beijing is losing its young workforce. Beijing is becoming a city that runs on memory and political prestige, while its economic vitality quietly drains away. Meanwhile, Shanghai, China's financial capital, the city that hosts the gleaming skyline that every documentary about China's rise uses as its establishing shot, the Bund at night, the Huangpu River, the futuristic geometry of Pudong. And yet, a woman from Sichuan province who moved to Shanghai shared her experience online. I've noticed that there are fewer and fewer people on the streets of Shanghai these days. When I visited Chenghuang Temple today, there were barely any people. It used to be so crowded you couldn't move. When I arrived in 2018, I had to queue for a long time just to buy buns. I realized that Shanghai's economy is not what it used to be. She said she was starting to miss her hometown in Chongqing. That's a deeply telling sentence. When people start missing their hometowns, the places they left because they believed the big city promised more, the calculation has fundamentally shifted. Other netizens added context. The population decline is real and visible. A real estate worker said, "I've seen it firsthand. But I believe most of the people leaving are the lower income workers. The higher income groups aren't leaving," which is exactly how economic stratification works in a downturn. The people with resources stay or have the luxury of choosing. The people without resources, the ones who came to the city to build resources, are the ones being pushed out. And when they go, they take their spending, their energy, their labor, and their children with them. Here's one of the most quietly devastating images from everything we've covered today, and it comes not from a shuttered mall or an empty street, but from a train. It's the Chinese New Year season, the biggest human migration on Earth. Hundreds of millions of people are traveling back to their hometowns to see their families. And this year, something strange showed up in the footage being shared on social media. On the high-speed trains, the ones with the seats that cost 500 yuan for a 3-hour ride, the carriages are noticeably empty. Vacant seats, room to breathe. Nobody rushed to buy those tickets. Meanwhile, on the old green trains, the slower, cheaper trains that take 14 hours to cover the same distance, for 180 yuan the carriages are packed so full that passengers are standing in the aisles, standing by the bathroom doors, wedged in wherever there's a spare few inches of floor. And the passengers in those green train carriages, silent, heads down, eyes closed. Not the festive energy you'd expect from people heading home for the new year. One passenger did the math for everyone. The price difference between the high-speed train and the green train is over 300 yuan. That's enough to buy a winter coat for an elderly parent, a box of snacks and toys for the children. For a migrant worker who spent the year calculating every single yuan, that 300 yuan isn't a convenience fee. It's a choice between comfort and something real. High-speed rail is a point of enormous national pride in China. The government spent trillions building out one of the most extensive high-speed networks in the world. And yet, the high-speed trains run with empty seats while the cheap slow trains of the flow. That's not a transportation problem. That's an income distribution problem while wearing a train ticket. China built the world's fastest trains, tallest towers, and brightest skyline. But speed means nothing when people can't afford the ride. Towers mean nothing when they stand empty. And a skyline means nothing when the people who built it are gone. The silence tells the truth. GDP won't.